Plus you might, but.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you had a chance to go outside, but it is getting warmer and warmer. So it's really nice to be in here where it's a little bit cool. My name is Kathy Booth. I work at Wested. I'm looking out in the audience and I'm seeing some wonderful old friends. And I'm also seeing a bunch of people I don't know. I have to say it is so exciting to be back at this conference. I feel like this is like the family reunion for a lot of the change makers in our system. There's so much good trouble that has been ginned up at this conference. And I'm just really delighted to be able to see so many of you in person. So what we're going to be talking about today is bridging the general education CTE divide. And I'm actually really glad that we're doing this presentation, having heard the new framework that's coming out of the Chancellor's office. So all of us who've been working in workforce know that the pathway to jobs is never as linear as we sometimes make it look with our nice top to sock crosswalks and things like that. And what we really need to be doing is figuring out ways to meet our students on that wiggly journey that they're on, because many of them are already working and have been doing so for years. And so if we start to think about how our curriculum fits into their life path, we get to make some really important changes in the opportunities that people have. And that really is the thing that is so heartening about working in community colleges. I know the last 2 years have been so hard, that it's really good to remember that we have the ability to sort of open up doorways for people. And the more we do that intentionally, the more we're able to address a lot of the structural barriers that our students have been facing their whole lives. So I can figure out how to advance this slide. There we go. What we're going to be doing, oh, it's not advancing there. So is that it's, go ahead and see if it's in slideshow. We were having a little tech difficulty having the owl and the projections. Here we go. Thank you so much. Okay, so we decided what we're going to do is focus on business as the discipline in which it's most easy to look at this issue about what is general education and what is CTE. Because one of the things that I hear the most in the field when people talk about CTE is they act like it is completely different than transfer. And the business major is our best place to say, well, that's not true, because business is one of our most popular transfer majors. So what we want to do is really dig into that particular discipline to think about how our business programs relate to jobs, and conversely, which majors actually relate to jobs and business. So we're going to look at it from both sides of the equation. The second thing we're going to do is, I keep saying we, so Alex Wright, my colleague here, is going to be joining us. She's an economist, so she's going to be able to give you some really rich insights in addition to what I'll be describing. So we're going to show you some tools that Wested has developed that are available for free that can help you look at this sort of complex relationship between school and work. And then we're going to look at some ways together that we can work with students to use this information to help them be more effective at getting to their goals. So one of the things that I want to flag is this is intended to be an interactive session, which is difficult to do from a podium, but we're going to do all that we can. So I'm going to start doing like pop quizzes and I'm going to ask you questions. And for our folks that are following along online, we want you to participate. So whichever one of us is not here at the podium is going to be watching chat. So I encourage you to ask questions and give your responses so that we can really learn together. And the final thing that I wanted to share is that this presentation, while we're doing this at a CTE conference, is so relevant for many of the different change efforts that your college is going through right now. So we tend to see like these divides. I think we heard yesterday that it's so frustrating that sometimes guided pathways work can be done without consulting CTE folks when we're the ones who sort of invented the model. But also all the work that's happening with student equity, all the things that your grant writers are scrambling to do right now for K-16 regional pathways, that all relates to the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. And Alex, I do not know how to advance this slide.
You just did.
Oh, it is, oh, it's not, you're going here. Oh, fascinating. Okay. I struggle with technology. All right. So let's talk about one of our most common majors. This is where we're going to do our first question for you all. And what I want to know is, what type of jobs do you think business majors actually get?
As in associate degrees or both?
Both?
Both.
bartenders.
Or is it a business major?
There's no such thing as a business major.
You have to specialize in resources or marketing or accounting once they get to the 4-year.
When you get to the fourth.
Okay, when you get to 4, I'm going to be repeating for the folks that are online. So when you get to 4-year, you actually have to specialize in accounting and marketing and things like that. So let's just talk about community colleges. What type of jobs do you think the people who go into the business APT get besides bartender? Barista.
Sales.
Sales.
Human resources.
HR.
Marketing.
HR.
Recruiting.
Recruiting.
Office technologies, clerk,
Office tech and clerk. Manager.
and
Anything you're seeing in the chat?
services.
Online. Let's go down to the great. So that's a lot of different types of jobs. So now I want to flip it, and when students come to you and they say, I want to be a business major, what jobs do you think they think they're going to get? CEO. Mhm. We're going to be the boss of everybody.
Accountants.
Accountants,
Program project managers.
project managers,
Investments.
investments,
Entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs. Do you notice how different those two lists were? Next question. When people come to you and say, I'm going to be a business major, why do you think they're saying that?
They were told.
They were told. Who told them that?
Grandparents, parents, counselors.
Family members and counselors? TV?
I picked it because I didn't know what else I wanted to do.
Great, you're an actual business major, didn't know what else to do. And so why did that seem like the thing to do if you didn't know?
It just seemed like a solid foundation.
A solid foundation.
To the top of the list in alphabetical order.
It's the top of the list, when you're in CCC apply, right after accounting, right?
Because it's creativity.
Creativity.
That's what my daughter told me. She wants to be creative and her business, what she wants to do. So
Okay, so somebody who wants to be a creative thinks the business major is gonna help them be able to do that.
I think it's to make money. I think they associate that they're gonna make money.
So people think they're gonna make money if they get this. So yeah, if you're really living on the edge, it's like, I need to get some security, being a business major seems like a great idea. This is capitalism after all, right? Okay, so that's a swirl of different things that are going on. What we know, because we know the curriculum and the transfer pathways, what they think they're gonna get based on their dreams, the things that other people are telling them. So this makes it really difficult for students to actually confront what happens when they go into an actual business major. So for this, what is going to be challenging, because I can't see it on the screen. Maybe I can do it down here. It's not even, oh, I can do it that way. Great. Thank you. There's a lot of words on the screen. So I'm going to sort of paraphrase. So at the top is an actual description from El Camino College about what the business ABT is. So you know there's just tremendous pressure on all of us to dial up ABTs right now. It's in our funding formula. We really want students to be able to go through in a seamless, fast way to get to their transfer goals. And what I noticed when I look at this is a lot of academic language. Can any of you define macroeconomics versus microeconomics? And Alice, you can't talk.
We have to put that in the description because
That's part of the
key
ABT.
elements of ABT.
Yeah.
Right, so the statement is, this is the key elements of the ABT, so we have to put it there, right? So I'm a student, and I actually couldn't tell you the difference between macro and microeconomics right now. And I'm looking at this fiscal and monetary policy in the marketplace. And then these list of jobs, accounting, management, marketing, ops administration. And maybe if you're really savvy and they've got the PLOs, the program level outcomes listed, you can look at this. So the mission is saying, so that I can analyze business situations involving legal issues and figure out what to do. And I can compare and contrast the functions of systems and application software in business. Funny, I wanted to be the boss of everybody. Is this what I'm getting? So I've heard the story so many times from students that they thought it was going to be a good idea to go into business, and they get into the major, and all they want to do is just like take their eyes out with a fork. They're like, I can't believe I have to take these classes. So you might say like, oh, maybe these weren't like really reading or really helpful descriptions. But what I want to do is make this even more real by looking at what you actually take if you do this ABT for those of you who are not yet familiar. Now it's not advancing the other way.
Yeah, we know.
You know, okay, so looks like I can do one or the other. Alice is gonna be my tech support.
Yeah. Oh, man, that didn't work.
Slide control everyone. Yeah,
Especially since it looks at it as a sentence.
Right, let's go back to just,
from the beginning.
yeah, her expense shows. There it is.
It's not trying to go though.
Let's go. Let's get out of this and just do the regular.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me one moment, please.
Okay, so while Alex is working on the tech support, what I'm going to show you is from the program Pathways Mapper. So if you haven't seen this tool, it was created by Bakersfield College and a bunch of other colleges are now adopting it. And it's basically a visual representation of the catalog, which can be helpful because one of the things that I've noticed if you look in catalogs is it will list all the courses you're supposed to take in completely inscrutable combinations of letters and numbers. I can't tell you how many times when I was working on developmental education reform, and everyone's like, well, no, that's math 2B. I was like, how do you 2B in that math? Because it's really hard to know like what is actually in those disciplines. So what's helpful about what Program Pathways Mapper does is it includes those codes because you do need them for enrollment, but it also tells you the name of the course and shows you the order, which we'll show you at some point.
Goodness gracious.
It-
This is where we need the tech guy. Yes.
Don't use it as an extension, but just,
Do the share screen.
no,
I'm sharing.
That's what I was trying to do.
no.
All right. Okay. Okay,
We're just gonna leave it like this, even though it's not the best view.
Exactly.
So you can see who's gonna do what slide. Okay, so let's take a look at what's actually up on the screen. So for those of you who can't read the small text, so basically if I were gonna do the business ABT, I'd start out by taking finite math, woo, and then I'm gonna take intro to business and some GE things, and then I'm gonna take that microeconomics, so I'll figure out what that actually means, and probability and statistics, and ethics, which might be pretty interesting, and then some more GE requirements. And then if we go on to your third term, is this showing? Yep. Yes, okay. So then you get to take financial accounting, then you get to macroeconomics, and then you get to do some more GE requirements, and you get to do managerial accounting, business law, and some more GE. So no wonder students are like, this is not what I signed up for. This does not help me become the CEO that I've always dreamed of being. And what's interesting is that you've got all those gen ed requirements. So odds are, and I'm sure you've heard this story from students, that they end up taking a psychology class or a sociology class, and they're kind of like, at last, somebody's talking about the stuff that I'm really interested in. And then they want to switch majors. And then they have to have a really uncomfortable conversation with their family that was like, wait, you can't be a psychology major. What are you going to do with a psychology major? And you're like, I don't know, but it feels right. And we don't give students a vocabulary to talk about why that psychology major is actually fitting better with the skill sets that they need in order to be in charge. Okay, the final thing I'm going to show you, this one is a very div slide. So one of the things that's on Program Pathways Mapper is that it provides information about the labor market. What kind of jobs are they? How much do they pay? And that type of information, which we can all ever see. What was really interesting in that very long list is that, again, it sounded a lot more like the types of things that you were saying that you can do with a business major. And it also is clarifying that you have to have a bachelor's degree to get most of these jobs. So students may look at this list and it is so long that they're like, there's got to be CEO in there somewhere, right? And so they may not be able to interpret this information because it's actually listing all sorts of jobs that they may not even have ever known existed. Like I actually can't tell you for sure what an industrial production manager does, and I might be able to guess about a logistician, but I couldn't tell you if I would like it that much or not, because I'm not really sure what that's going to be like day to day. So this is the problem that even with tools that are as user-friendly, as student-centered as Program Pathways Mapper, this is not going to help the student make the decision that they need to make. So let's take a look now. So this is the confusing universe our students live in. Let's talk about what actually happens in reality. So there's a very interesting tool that West End developed. It's available for free. What we did is we mined a data set from the US Census called the American Community Survey. And what happens is people say, I got my bachelor's degree in this, and they say, this is what the job I had in my 20s, the job I had in my 30s, the job I had in my 40s. So you can look empirically to see what the relationship between someone's bachelor's degree and what their job actually is. They don't have information on community college program completion, but bachelor's degree is still really helpful for the EET in business. So for those who earned a business bachelor's degree in California, we've got a list of the most common jobs. And so what we're seeing here are managers. Oh, hey, maybe this is a good route for folks who want to be in charge of other people. And the accountants and supervisors, sales, financial managers. We actually see CEOs, but maybe not. It's chief executives and legislators. I know, the two legislators we heard from yesterday were both teachers, marketing and sales. So this is beginning to feel like, yeah, this seems about right. However, what happens if you look at it the other way and say, for people that have different types of jobs that are associated with business, what did they major in? So I'm going to, for the purpose of today's discussion, say there's three major groupings within business. So there's the managing part of it, there's the accounting part of it, and there's the entrepreneurship part of it. And they have slightly different skill sets. So let's look at each of those one at a time. So for people who become managers, we've got a list here, and hopefully you can read it. So I'm going to just have the group respond. Do any of these majors surprise you when you see why people studied when they became a manager? Take a shaking head. Why are you not surprised?
Because they're all the core disciplines within the industry that are used.
So the core disciplines that are used, like what?
Like finance, especially psychology.
And why is psychology relevant?
Change management.
Change management.
Motivation.
Motivation.
Psychology is not an AET. Maybe it's separate division coursework.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Psychology is not an AET unless we suggest it as a general ed.
Okay, so the observation is that even though it's a very relevant area, it's not in the AET. And so unless you're suggesting to students that they should also take, we saw that Bakersfield suggests ethics, but they're not suggesting psychology. So there is a missed opportunity where there is an empirically related discipline, an academic discipline that helps you be effective in this type of a role, which my guess is a bunch of your students might be more interested in than accounting, or could be wrong. What else do you notice that's surprising in here, or not?
General business, which is troubling since the general business course is not a requirement for the AET.
But general business is not a requirement for the AET. So again, we're seeing at this juncture between the AET, which sounds like it's everything you ever wanted to know to succeed in business. I think it's the name of the play. And it is, yet we're looking at something else. I think the other thing that's interesting in here is the English language and literature majors. Yes.
So the first two, business management and general business, make sense because those people are interested in that. But when you start looking at comp and psych and English, when you manage people, you're dealing with people, and those disciplines are about understanding and relating to people.
I'm going to paraphrase for the folks online. So we're basically communications, psych, English meaning writing, means that's what about dealing with people. And that's a big part of what business is. And that's absolutely true. That the general ledger deals with an entirely different aspect of business. So it's no wonder. And this is one of the things that I find really important when talking to people about labor market data related to jobs, which is that everyone's like, yeah, maybe that's right when we put up some MZ data, but it's because often their own experience or the experience of someone they know really well was not linear. So one of the things that has been so fascinating to me since I started working on guided pathways is that I have come out as a women's studies major and theater minor in public countless times, which I actually used to do everything I could to obscure in my bio. So like, those are real majors, right? But in truth, they gave me all sorts of skills that made me effective at what I do right now. So as a women's studies major, I learned to look at what was not in the dominant narrative, like thinking about what's going on in jobs. My theater background means that I can stand up here in front of you and I'm pretty held together. And when the tech stuff goes wrong, I'm still calm because I work backstage and it's always an experience in the show. So these are the types of things that I have the capacity now to articulate. And part of that came from my own background and privilege, that people helped me describe why my crazy majors made me eligible to be in the job market. But that's not something we can guarantee for all of our students. And if we're not talking to employers and clarifying the key skills that we're teaching, then we miss an opportunity to proactively, as experts, explain to employers why our students are so uniquely qualified. And if we don't tell students, we leave them without a set of skills that they really need. And that's one of the things I thought the Chancellor's office was calling out that we need to be paying attention to. So we can give students social capital by helping them articulate for themselves how this relates. And interestingly, we have the opportunity at that point to also understand the skills they have brought to us that we did not teach them, that relate particularly to the managing area of work. So as you can see, as we open this up a little bit, we get all sorts of opportunities to make this work so much more rewarding with students because we're helping them articulate how what they're doing right now and what they've been doing relates to where they're trying to go. So that's managing. So let's go take a look at the next discipline, which is accounting. So remember before, a lot of those blue lines were not too different in their length, which is basically saying how common each of these is. So what do you notice when you look at the accounting list of majors? Yeah.
It's skewed pretty heavily. There's strong alignment, right?
So there's strong alignment.
Yeah.
A strong alignment between the field of study and the actual work. And that is because we know what is in that discipline. So you can see that this is if you want to be an accountant, what we're doing is a great that. Because I may be making a little bit of fun of people who really like to tick and tie, but actually it's a fantastic and important skill set. And there's lots of people for whom that might be exactly what they want to do, and we get really good paying jobs. We always need accountants. And so we should be saying to them, if that's what you like, this is absolutely the right path for you. And we can tell you both based on our program level outcomes and based on what we see in the labor market. So the next one I have to have Alex help for, because I went to look for what an entrepreneurship bachelor's degree was, and you know what? Couldn't find one.
Thank you. As Kathy mentioned, US Census doesn't track entrepreneurship, right? It's this obscure yet ubiquitous line of work that we have. So in my research, and so I used to oversee small business development centers. I worked for the SBA for a little bit, so I'm quite accustomed to this. Not to mention, my husband owned the quintessential bicycle shop for 20 years, right? That we see in all the commercials. So I gathered this information from both the U.S. Small Business Administration and the Kauffman Foundation, which has a lot of good research out right now for entrepreneurship. More than likely, I will stop. More than likely, at least 50% of the students that are in your classes are going to end up as entrepreneurs in some way. They are either going to own a small business or they're going to be independent contractors, but that is simply the movement of occupations in the 21st century. So when we really with the primary majors, you see business administration, computer science, accounting, marketing, you get into psychology, right? Psychology, environmental science is a big one, moving towards the green economy. And then engineering and finance, right? And then I thought this was even more interesting when we further delineate into actual tech startups, right? Which is technology is the 21st century. You see a little bit of a difference there, right? 92% of US tech founders held bachelor's degrees, but in those bachelor's degrees, the particular fields, science, hard science of any type, technology, engineering, mathematics, basically your STEM disciplines. And then a third of them were actually in business, accounting, and finance, right? Which makes sense because you have to have that combination of skills when you're an entrepreneur. Furthermore, we know through this study at Kauffman that 31% actually hold master's degree and about 10% have doctorates out there. So keeping this in mind with the discussion that Kathy began here with what's going on, what's interesting that you see? Do you guys see anything interesting in this lineup? Would you suspect that anything's missing? Please. Startups is, so it is, and it's also the highest revenue generating though. So that's why I did pull this Kauffman Foundation report. But the other listing that you're seeing there is coming straight from the Small Business Administration. So again, keeping that in mind that you have a variety of disciplines that are engaged in entrepreneurship and small business development. And with those different disciplines come the variation of the skills, right? All right, and so in this, we looked at accounting, management, and entrepreneurship, okay? And we listed it out by technical skills and 21st century skills, right? Those 21st century skills being what we used to call kind of soft skills, common skills, right? But they're really even that much more quintessential in the 21st century, because for somehow, some reason, over the past 40 years, we seem to have lost a lot. And that's exactly why you see that terminology of 21st century skills, like a reminder for us as educators that we have to incorporate these things. So you can see accounting, management, you have your general stuff in accounting, which of course we all love. Management, you have your sales, right? Marketing, forecasting, data analysis, technical skills for entrepreneurship. A lot of what we found, and again, this came from Small Business Administration, marketing, human resource development, as we heard mentioned earlier, financing, financial management, some analytics there. And in our 21st century skills, as we go across those, we see obviously Microsoft Office. And that's really, I can tell you, having looked across this state at top hard and soft skills, Microsoft Office is a #1 skill across industry sectors. Remember, when you have training programs in manufacturing, that doesn't just mean an assembly person or a production tech. They're using Excel sheets on the regular in order to keep track of inventory, communicate progress on SOPs, etc. So these are really skills that are across the board. So you see that under accounting listed there, of course, detail-oriented and a research-oriented mind. Under management, of course, we have our leadership skills and our operations and our sales. And then in entrepreneurship, again, the heavy stuff there is your leadership, but partners and communication. That's something that we don't see very often listed as those 24th century skills. We see written and verbal communication, but the ability to actually develop partnerships, right? And those what is it? Was it Socrates and the methods of persuasion, right? Or Plato's methods of persuasion. Thank you. I see you nodding your head over. You know what I'm talking about, right? Ethos, logos, pathos, those methodologies for persuasion. And then again, research here. So while all business-related occupations need communications and management skills, you see the variation in the other skills. And then let us not forget here, the primary conversation that we're having in the 21st century across all industry sectors, including education as a sector, is equity. And as Kathy mentioned earlier, one of those big pieces is that lack of social capital, right? And ensuring that the students can articulate the skills that they're actually learning, be that in a welding program, right? There's no reason why a welder can't have a 350-word assignment that helps them to hone in those skills on written and verbal communication. Because I guarantee you, when they go for that job interview, the likelihood that they get that job, if they can't even articulate the industry credentials they have, the intricacies and the nuances that they've learned, they're not going to be high on the list for that job, because no matter what, managers and small business owners need people who can communicate and articulate themselves. So you see here the share of students enrolled by race and ethnicity, and we took the separation between business and social science, which is probably not a surprise to everyone in the room. And I'm sure you are quite accustomed to what you're seeing here insofar as the deviation across completion, business, and social science. So in other words, what we want to make sure is that a student can major in a social science of some sort. Chicano studies, right, American Indian studies, and it doesn't mean that they're disqualified from this profession of management, because they're still gaining those skills that are ultimately going to be those critical thinking skills and the articulation skills that they're going to need for this. Right. So I'm going to hand it back to Kathy for one of her convoluted maps that will explain crystal clear.
Actually, going to go back one slide. So I want to point something out.
So one of the things that I always find interesting, I've been looking more and more at the relationship between race and major. And what I'm struck by is that white students pretty much major in everything. That line you're seeing, 27, 27, 27, happens in national data sets as well. And then what you start seeing is other races get highly segregated toward one direction or another. And we can very specifically to try to change that as institutions. But we also may need to work within the majors to clarify where they're going to go. And one of the reasons for that is math. So there's going to be a lot more Latinx and African-American people who are going to be in social sciences because they, as we know, if any of you saw the basic skill progress tracker, which was an old resource before 8705 on Datamart that showed where students were placed when we were still doing the placement test, and disproportionately the African-American and Latino students at the lowest levels of dev ed. And some of that had to do with the educational resources that they had, some of it had to do with the way that we did testing for them. But there's long been this tracking that happens, and you may not be able to turn it around fast enough for somebody to get out of it. So you really be thinking about what their choices still are related to the major that they ended up in, because if psychology actually is a great way to be a manager, you can say to somebody, don't sweat it. Like, take the more relevant math, which is going to be statistics, and know that you've done the right thing. You didn't take the stupid route to math. And we still have that language that shows up about what's a real math and what's pretend math. And I think that really layers directly into bias. So this slide is one that I used to show all the time. I won a big career letters project for creating it, and it had to do with fake pathways. So, when you got business calculus as a requirement for finishing a business major, and that is something you're supposed to take in your first semester, which of course now with 8705 is even more likely you're going to be asked to do it. The question was, if you started below transfer level, how would you get to the transfer level course? And so the folks from Career Ladders were working there with a specific college, and this was the map that 3 PhDs created that showed how you got from where you started to what was actually the starting line for your major. And the only way they were able to put it together is they asked one of the sports coaches, because there's a lot of athletes in business, and he had spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours figuring it out. And the saddest thing is that the number of students that actually navigated this successfully was less than 10%. So we don't have that problem anymore with 8705 because we don't have the long developmental sequence, but you do have that issue of, you say to people, you've got to get into math right away. And it can become destiny. And if you can think about that as somebody like me, who actually chose my college because they had no math requirements, but it's such bad stereotype threat, that I would have gone over to the social science side and would have said, this can't be for me. And I might have then made a different career choice, and we want to leave that open for students. All right, so now that you know the problem, let's start talking about solutions. So I'm going to show you another tool that Wested put together, also freely available. We're going to show you the link to it, and they're called opportunity maps. And what we're trying to do is deal with the problem that labor market information is really confusing. It is not for your novice user. Most of the people that I talk to that who have PhDs, who work at community colleges, cannot make heads or tails of it because of the way it's structured. So what we need to do is figure out ways to provide this information to students so they can actually make choices by giving them what's relevant for them. So in order to create these, I'm just going to quickly go through our sources of information. So we're pulling from credible places. We're pulling from the curriculum inventory to figure out what are the programs that are around. We're looking at available jobs and starting salaries at the regional level. We're pulling that from EPSI, which not only has information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but they're scraping things from LinkedIn and job postings and things like that to really understand the job market. We also have from there some skills data that's been focused on the regional level. And then we have the information, the empirical measures that people actually got from that resource I mentioned earlier, that survey where we're asking people, if you have this major, what job did you get? And then we organized everything based on the strong workforce program regions. So this is what an opportunity map looks like. I'm picking one for the Inland Empire. So what we did is we picked the 11 most common meta majors, I know. Entire ream of sticky notes, creating your meta majors, and you recreated the academic disciplines. Am I right? Yeah, that's, I've been looking at lists for a long time, and it pretty much ends up back at that. So we can guess what the constellation of majors probably are at your college, although you may not have ag if you're in San Francisco. And then what we've done, over on the left-hand side, you're seeing those skills. And we're looking both at the common skills or the 21st century skills, and then the technical or hard skills that you would need within this meta major area, which is business, that is specific to the Inland Empire. So these exist for all of your regions and all of your meta majors, and you can download them and use them as soon as you would like. Then the green section is saying, okay, so in the Inland Empire, what are your choices? So among certificate programs, these are the different types of certificates. Then we look at associate's degrees and we look at bachelor's degrees. We're looking empirically at actually what's on offer if you're in the Inland Empire. And then down at the bottom, you're looking at the top related jobs that are available and what their starting salary is. So this basically helps you understand there actually aren't that very many jobs that are available if you just got the associate's degree. And you can see the enormous funding differential, or the salary differential, between having a middle skills job and actually going to get a bachelor's degree.
Can you read those out a little bit since they're so small?
Oh, yes. So if you want to be a sales representative, you can make $29,000. And if you want to be a general operations manager, you can make $44,000, but you have to have a bachelor's degree as an example of that. So just to give you a sense of what this looks like in another context, this is the same meta major area of business for LAOC. And you'll know that there's a lot more because it's a more robust regional economy. There are more types of jobs, there's more types of programs. And that's why it's so important to cut this information regionally. You also see there's some slight differences in the types of jobs that are available and what they pay. And there may be some shifts in the specific skills that are necessary. So this is what an opportunity map looks like. Yes.
You probably already addressed them all, but I just happened to notice that there were some questions in chat.
Oh, Alex, do you want to?
There's no questions in the chat, it's just
Just little bubbles.
previous stuff.
What show
There you
figured?
go.
Thank you for checking on that. Yes.
Did y'all consider adding like cost of living for the region? I'm just curious, like how it balances out. What the cost of living?
So the question is, do we think about including living wages? That's a great suggestion. We're actually in the middle of reworking the format. But the great thing is that we made this for you and we know it's not right. So I was talking to one particular college and we were talking about the arts and the major and they're like, well, where's culinary arts? And I said, culinary arts? And they're like, arts, it's art. So we have culinary arts and we have arts and humanities and they're all in one meta major area. And I was like, that's fantastic. You should absolutely be able to pull information that way. So we also made a free web tool where you can build your own data sets for this. So you can pull in whatever top codes you like and it'll produce all the same information and then you can make an even better map. Here's a tip. Have one of your classes that teaches graphic design, have your students do a competition to create an opportunity map that will be useful for them, and then you can pull in the living wage data, which is available on Launchboard. Great question. But I have a question for you. Do you believe it? Will I show you that opportunity now? What, do you think it's going to be right? Uncomfortable silence. I ask you because we use these at the California Guided Pathways 2.0 Institute back in November. And basically all of the breakout sessions were a riot of what the heck is this? This is not true. Actually, my favorite quote from it was, if this is true, it's really disturbing. So that's why Alex is going to tell you what to say when that happens.
Thank you. Now we'll go through a little bit of critiques, right? Exactly what I can tell by looking at this room that nobody here would be intentionally contrary. But I'm sure you have all been in rooms where you do have consternation about this, right? We know what community colleges are all about and what happens behind those closed doors. So here's 5 of your most common responses you get. I know there are more jobs out there. right? And there's a lot of words on these slides, so I'm gonna summarize them for you and everything's gonna be available later in this PowerPoint deck. But essentially, yes, we know there's more jobs that your students get. But when you look at it through the lens of regional economics and labor economics, what's really happening is that students get jobs that are available where they live. So they're taking those skills irrespective of the discipline they studied. And they're getting jobs that can help them pay their rent, their mortgage, put food on their table, support their families in the jobs that are in the local economy. So yes, there's more jobs out there, but the reality is, if you're not paying attention to what's happening in your local economy, we're not really participating and building that pathway to economic mobility and that economic opportunity, which is what we stand for in community colleges. All right, as the one that we were just talking about, these wages are far too low. There's no way, right? Yeah, okay, they're starting salaries, and that's what we're using. But ultimately, the point is, while wages have increased, only about half of community colleges Exeters actually, that don't transfer, right, actually make a living wage. And then again, this is based on statistical analysis, right? So yeah, the wages, that's really is what the wages are in those areas. And again, remember, bringing small business back into this, 50% of Americans are employed by small businesses, and they're paying attention to those margins, right? Particularly in those service sectors. You're focusing way too much on money as the value provided by a job. Education is inherently valuable. Why are you focused on what they're going to do afterwards? What do you mean? We exist in this inherently valuable sector, right? Well, okay. The bottom line is students are going to study what interests them. If they end up in one of those business administration pathways and it's completely foreign to them, they're likely going to transfer their major, they're going to switch their majors. They're going to ultimately do that, right? But the reality is, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, why do students go to school in the 21st century? To get a job, to support their family. They want to become secure, they want some stability, and they want to get to that ultimate social well-being. They want to have time to recreate. They want to have time to do what they want to do. They want to have that leisure time, which we don't include in GDP, which we should, but they want that. And that's the point of them going to school, right? So you can use strategies like these opportunity maps, right, to provide more detail to the students. So the uses are not necessarily just for educators, right, and administrators and faculty. This is something that the students could actually use. I was actually thinking about this, teaching economics the other day. I thought, oh my gosh, here I am teaching them a bunch about labor indicators and GDP. I said the most useful thing I could probably do for these students is pull up a list of the top 30 occupations that an economics major could get, even though they're mostly business majors. But it didn't even dawn on me as faculty, and I've been teaching for years, right? To say, oh my gosh, it's beyond course curricula. I need to actually give them an idea and a better understanding of jobs in this field. All right, and then just a couple more. This one has a lot of words on it, but making it look like some majors are better than others. Sometimes it's a reflection of that gap in social capital, right? That particularly is found in our underserved communities, our BIPOC communities, right? So it's simply a matter of being able to articulate those skills. And that's really what we're trying to enforce here when we're talking about equity gaps as well. Students can enroll, they can persist, they can complete, but if they don't know how to articulate their skills, it's a huge gap in that equity. And then of course, colleges can work directly with employers to clarify the value of your majors, right? Remember, these are not nationwide industry credentials that they're talking about all the time. They don't know your community college sometimes from the next door shop, right? So you've got to get in there and express the value of these credentials. And then of course, there's structural issues. Some community colleges are working that with regard to the case for early childhood education. But I wanted to make sure that we mentioned in here that another thing is the implicit bias in the hiring managers, right? And we can absolutely start working with them on that. And then finally, I can't control what employers want, and what they want isn't good for our students. let's take a step back. And I know we're all biased, but the reality is employers want specialized labor so that they can produce efficiently and they can cover their expenditures and make some profit so that they can live as well. They're not intentionally trying to do things that are bad. This is the way our society is built. This is our economy. So it's not that they're trying to devalue what we do in education. They're simply looking for the whole package. They are looking for holistic education. They're looking for technical skills with also those 21st century skills. So by understanding what those employers value, right, colleges can help students better navigate those career pathways. And then this last one is an example from a petroleum technology program. I'm gonna hand that back to Kathy over here to close this out.